It's being called a game changer for women here in the United States. Millions of American workers now have expanded protections thanks to a new law called the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act.
And it aims to promote women's health and economic well-being. And to break down what that really means for women here in the Mid-South, we are live with attorney Alan Crone this morning. Welcome back to Live at 9. Good to have you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Of course. Let's jump right in. So we're talking about reasonable accommodations for pregnant women. This would really be a game changer here in the Mid-South. So what are some of those reasonable accommodations that we're talking about?
Well, as you know, it's always been illegal to discriminate against pregnant workers. Now, those workers have the protection of being able to ask for a reasonable accommodation that is short of leave or what have you. So it's like shorter breaks, maybe time to go see, for prenatal care. Maybe it's a little bit of equipment if they have to stand a long time. Maybe they need a pad or something to stand on that makes it easier to stand. It's stuff like that that helps them get from point A to point B during their pregnancy.
So, Alan, also tell us a little history here. To get to this point where we are today, was there any pushback? Were there a lot of folks who were concerned that maybe we shouldn't go this far? Or did most people agree this just makes sense?
Well, with anything that goes through Congress, there's always some people for it, some people against it. I mean, I think the business community, they don't like, nobody likes to be told that they have to do something. And so the idea of a reasonable accommodation for one group of people is always a little controversial. Now, the law builds in the notion that it has to be reasonable, and the Americans with Disabilities Act has fleshed out what that means within an accommodation context. And it can't be an undue burden on the employer. So there's a balancing act that goes on that would that would be part of that give and take at the Congress, and it just really kind of codifies the notion that for pregnant workers get this kind of reasonable accommodation. There was some ambiguity whether the Americans with Disabilities Act extended that protection to pregnancy, and but now that right is fully enshrined in federal law, and I think the fact that it's passed it with a Republican majority in the House and a slim Democrat majority in the Senate with the Democratic president shows that there was bipartisan support for this law.
And support on both sides. And we know 2.8 million workers will actually benefit from this. So kind of break down the need for this here in the Mid-South, and any cases that maybe you have covered that this would have been useful.
Well, it's always amazing to me the level of ignorance, and I say that with all due respect. People, some business people just think that if a woman is pregnant that she is so fragile that she can't do anything, and so pregnant women get hassled a lot at the workplace. I've had many cases where the woman needs to take a break every now and then. Any woman who's been pregnant knows that you need to go powder your nose more often during the day when you're pregnant, and so those kinds of things that just common courtesy ought to allow you to do, allow the woman to get those breaks. And we have found, even before this law was passed, but certainly now that it's passed, we have found that once we can get on the phone with the employer and their lawyer, we can usually negotiate these things after 3 or 4 phone calls. But now with this law, I think a lot of company side lawyers are going to be calling their clients and letting them know that now the law has a little bit more teeth to require these reasonable accommodations.
And Alan, with that in mind, as we were listening to you, what about enforcement? Because as we all know, not every company has a human resources department. So if a woman has a complaint against her company, and to make sure this law is enforced, what is she to do?
Well, you can go to the EEOC and file a complaint there. Excuse me. You can go hire a private attorney to help you. Sometimes just, getting, I I've had women print off a copy of the law and take it to their supervisor or the owner of the company and say, you know, look what I found online. I don't want to be a problem, but here's what I need. And the law requires a interactive process between the pregnant person and the company to try to work this out. And I'm hopeful that the word will get out about this law, and companies will on their own take it upon themselves to get in compliance and respond well to these women when they come forward. Unfortunately, the biggest problem with enforcing pregnant rights, if you will, is that it's a temporary condition, and it usually only comes into effect, you know, 4 or so months after the woman becomes pregnant. So it's it's only about a 5 or 6 month issue, and so by the time sometimes as you address it, it's over. So it's still an issue, but this law allows women to take immediate action, requires compliance in the moment, and if economic harm is suffered by the woman, then there are remedies in the law for that.
Okay, Alan, we know you'll stay on top of this for us. Alan Crone, we appreciate your time. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on. Y'all have a great 4th.
You as well.
You too.